Welcome. Happy Wednesday. Well, I'm glad that you were able to tune in today. We're going to get started. Pastor Chris and me are here again to talk to you about family and marriage recovery. And when we talk about recovery, we are discussing some of the common issues that are affecting our communities, our families, exactly, and the marriages all in between that bring the families together. Not to say families have to be joined together just by marriage, but all in between. We are tackling today the ongoing subject of substance abuse and substance dependency. And those who don't know, me and Chris collaborate together at Contigo Integrated Behavioral Health. I am a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and he is a licensed practical counselor and a licensed chemical dependency counselor and spiritual counselor as well, and a Christian counselor as well. So, yeah, definitely tap in, reach out if this resonates with you, or just tap in and learn. So, we're going to get started. Chris is going to join, and we're going to get. And if you join while we're talking, just wave, say hi, write a comment. We Hey Chris.
Hey, how are you doing there, Sarah? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm very grateful, feeling blessed. How are you doing today?
Blessed and highly favored.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm loving your shirt. I love those colors. They go really well with your glasses.
Thank you very much.
Looking nice. Look
Thank you.
nice.
I appreciate that. Likewise.
Yes, yes. Well, we meet again. So first, it's Wednesday. It's the middle of the week. How has your week been?
It's good. Busy. Uh, Busy and good. Week
Yeah.
flying by fast. I don't know why.
Yes, yes. This particular season, like the summer, is just woo, it's almost over.
I know it's crazy to think about.
Yes, yes. Well, have you noticed in your practice and your work an increase of seeing children or just families in general that are having similar issues that we're talking about today in our topic with substance abuse, substance dependency that are coming against the family union?
Yes, I actually, I've got an interesting take on this. From working in the schools and with other youth in various areas, uh, these addictions, I think, are not just mutually exclusive to drugs and vaping. I believe that electronics has a lot to do with it too.
Mm,
Kids are, they have to have their gadgets and they are going to sleep with them in bed with their phones and their tablets and their iPads and all of that. And they're joined at the hip.
mm,
And
mm,
when you say it's time to put up the gadgets, they pitch a fit, they cry, literally. They cry.
right.
I've had kids cry on me. There's one kid that literally collapsed
Oh
and
my.
slid down the wall. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Mm,
Pitched an absolute fit because they didn't want to give up the gadgets. And then, of course, there are occasions that parents have taken away the phones because the kids did whatever at home, and
mhm,
the child will say, I'm on punishment, I don't have my gadget. My phones are gone, my earbuds are gone. And that's really the best thing for them. So
mm.
that addiction is very powerful, apparently. So
Yes. Yes, I've seen that too. And it's almost like they lose their cheerful affect and they become Very sad, deeply sad, as almost they've lost a part of themselves.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, real tears flow down there. You know, I remember being a kid, and my parents, primarily my mom, if she wanted to punish us, she would say, "You can't get on the telephone."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
and
remember that too. I'm going through that.
that was rough, but I never cried.
Right.
I never cried about it, you know, or give me the keys to your car. You know, I didn't cry
Mm-hmm.
about it. I was probably disappointed, but I did it to myself. So it's not like I didn't pitch a fit or anything. I just hear the keys, hear the whatever. But these kids, they go through all these behaviors, and it separates and isolates the child from the family unit because when you look at them and how they're relating, they don't really relate to each other. The kids don't relate to each other unless it's through the telephone, through a video game, right? Because they're interactive. They don't relate to their parents
Mm-hmm.
or any people in authority because the phone is what they care about, and they use the phone differently than I believe adults because they use the phone to gossip,
Mm-hmm.
like malicious gossip. I'm like, what? So, and they use lots of different tools. They use the video cameras if they want to retaliate. You know, back in the day, and I'm not saying this was healthy or productive at all,
Mm-hmm.
but to show the difference, if if when we were at middle school or not high school, but middle school, and we wanted to get back at somebody or whatever, we meet them in the locker room or somewhere. You know, we'd meet them at
Right.
school and face to face. We're gonna talk it out. We're gonna slug it out. It's gonna happen. One of the two is gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
These kids don't do any of that. They use the telephone, the cell phone, to become aggressive.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. I've seen that a lot. And, a lot of the parents are kind of okay with it because it keeps the children occupied. But from like a psychology standpoint, when will the children be able to develop their own mind,
Mm-hmm.
actually learn about themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And then it always makes me think, where did they learn these addictive behaviors? So
Mm-hmm.
please tell me, to you, what is addiction to you?
To me, an addiction is it's a person's inability to say no to something,
Mm-hmm.
something that's controlling the behaviors of the individual. So I might be addicted to. I might like chips, potato chips, right? My favorite chip is Lay's potato chip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I need to stay away from the chip aisle at Kroger's because if I go down that aisle, I'm picking up a bag of chips, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, at the point to which I can go to Kroger and not go down that aisle or walk down that aisle and not pick up a chip and just walk down the aisle without fear, without
Mm-hmm.
trepidation, without contemplation. I don't have to think about it a million times. Do I want that chip? You know, is that chip calling my name, right?
Right.
If I can walk down that aisle without that happening, then I'm not addicted. But if I have to go through my mannerisms and processes,
Mm-hmm.
driving up to Kroger, parking my car, I'm thinking about that chip aisle, right? I'm walking in the door. I'm planning my approach. And
Right.
that chip aisle, I got to avoid aisle 11. you know, now I know I have a problem
Right.
because
Right.
I'm fixated on it. I'm fantasizing about it, right? Um, I'm trying to justify either using the chips or I'm trying to justify avoiding the whole scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, I have a problem. And that's how I define that.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition of addiction. And just to tag on to that, because I agree with what you said, but also knowing the consequence of engaging into those behaviors and still participating, not being able to have that discipline, self acknowledgement that, hey, if I eat these chips, mhm, the producer's here.
Ah,
Hold on. Go to him. I'll be down there. Okay. Okay. Hold on. Chill, Woody. Go. Okay. All right now. So, in not having that self acknowledgement to be able to say, I acknowledge that if I eat these chips, and this is an example, or I call this person that I know that's no good for me, or I pick up this stick of spice, or I use this last bump of cocaine, or I wake up in the middle of the night and eat all the cookies. That there's gonna be a consequence, a negative consequence that I'm very aware of that I should not deal with. It's not gonna be good for me, but I'm gonna do it anyways because I don't see myself worthy enough, or I don't feel valuable in this moment. Like it will amount to anything. So good point. Good point. Good point.
you know, I used to, sir, I used to run an IOP group, intensive outpatient patient group, and was coordinated that in Virginia, in Appalachia.
Oh
They
wow.
have a huge addiction problem there, and so I was running a group, and so I would put it like this, using the same analogy about chips.
Mhm.
Uh, I would tell them about, you know, my addictive behaviors. Right, I wasn't on any drugs or anything, but I like to snack, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And so I would use the analogy: if I'm laying in bed and it's midnight, I don't have any business leaving my house.
Mhm.
I'm in bed. Matter of fact, I might be in bed, tucked away in my pajamas.
Mhm.
And if I'm fantasizing about getting up and getting dressed and putting the keys in my hand, I said, if I get to the point to where I have my keys in my hand, I say it's all over. Because
Right.
I'm going to get the chips. I'm going.
Right. I know what you mean. I
Yeah.
know what you mean. I used to be weak on the chocolate chip cookies at McDonald's. Okay. The
Oh,
6 pack, I mean,
yeah.
come on. They're
Yeah.
warm, they're fresh.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
Please don't even
Yeah.
just hand them over. And I think they were $1 too, just $1.
They did it on purpose.
Give me all 6 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat those myself. Don't worry.
Right. And and the consequence was you're gonna gain weight, Chris. If you leave this house, you're gonna get those chips. You're gonna gain weight. I didn't care.
It's
I was not. I was like, I know I'm gonna gain weight, but I'm going anyway. No, no, that's not the right answer. Yeah. So yeah,
right, right, right. I had to get that discipline and say, no, no, Sarah, don't let it pass. Let that feeling
that's
pass.
right. That's it.
Let it go.
That's it. Let that pass.
And so, some of the science behind addiction, it boosts chemicals in our nervous system that make us feel satisfied. Like one people always talk about is the dopamine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The dopamine, it makes you feel so satisfied, it makes you feel like you just got a reward, you're being honored. Um, with the chocolate chip cookies, I was just mentioning with people who might use methamphetamines. You might feel an overflow of satisfaction and soothing and nurturing that You haven't gone a long time, or you've never have felt
That's it.
before.
That's it. You know, you reminded me of a case that I had ages ago, probably 10 years ago, in Appalachia. This gentleman, uh, he ended up a client of mine because he was using heroin. And and the sad thing was that he was in his 30s, but he basically told me something that sounded a lot like what you just mentioned, Sarah. He said that his first time using was what hooked him on using heroin because it felt like somebody being wrapping him up, swaddling him in a warm blanket. And he said
Mhm.
he'd never had such euphoria before or since that first time. And he chased that feeling ever since. And that's so significant because we're dealing with an embodied experience, right? So
Yes.
and a lot of times with addictive behaviors, whether it's I'm addicted to my cell phone, those
Mhm.
bag of chips, those chocolate chip cookies from McDonald's,
Mhm.
or that guy on the corner that's selling me that dime bag or whatever it is you're into, right? That drink.
Right.
Um, it starts here
Mhm.
in your mind first. So you reminisce about it. Maybe you might reminisce about the good old days, disregarding the bad times, right? Or the
Mhm.
poor decision making. We romanticize it, right?
Yes. The
We
fantasy.
rom- that's right. We romanticize it, and we lull ourselves into this false sense of security. Everything's gonna be all right, Chris. Just go out this one time. You know what I mean? How we talk to
Mhm.
ourselves, and
Yes.
next thing you know, you're gone. You're hunting for it.
Mhm.
And so you're in this particular scenario where didn't matter what happened, to my best friend or to 1,000 other people. Yeah, somebody OD, but that's not going to happen to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know,
Right.
I'm not gonna get arrested, or nothing bad's gonna happen to me. And
Mm-mm.
you romanticize it, you justify it
Mhm.
because what's important is the embodied experience.
Yes.
That embodied experience is super powerful because it overrides the prefrontal cortex that's saying, Chris, don't do it.
Mhm.
This big mistake of your life.
Mhm.
And
That's left.
we override the captain. We put him in the back seat. It's like, well,
Right.
we're gonna go take care of this right now. And before you know it, you know, you're doing it. And this is what I've seen with lots of people on lots of different substances, and some are a lot harder to get off of than others. Heroin is a big one. Methamphetamine is huge because they
Mhm.
say that the addictive power, right? The influences over the body doesn't last more than 48 hours. But after that, you're really not hooked anymore. After that, it's a psychological trip.
Mhm.
that, that
Yes.
that romantic piece that's playing in that record that's playing in your brain
Mhm.
is the part now you have to deal with, opposed to, say, if you're on heroin, it's physiological. you
Right.
know, yeah. So it's or even alcohol,
Mhm. Good point.
physiological.
Good point.
You know,
Yes.
I've had people that I used to work the emergency room, and I was a PERS care clinician in Shenandoah Valley in
Mhm.
Virginia, and I can't tell you how many people I saw through there and treated who were there because they developed psychosis because they were on alcohol,
Mm. Yes.
and with the psychosis came the diarrhea, the extreme diarrhea,
Mhm.
and the seizure disorder. And
Mhm.
I had to find a bed for him in a state hospital. It was that bad.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it could do a number on you, and it can create psychosis, and a lot of people don't realize that.
Yes, and death as well.
Yes, definitely.
Part of my journey, I got to travel to Korea and stay on Osan Air Force Base. And I remember one night in the barracks, they cleared everybody out. Everybody would party, everybody would be drinking. So this one night, I'm like, what happened? Why is everybody? It's the middle of the night. What are we all getting out of the barracks for? What is
Mm,
going on? I thought everybody's having a good time. Well, somebody drank too much soju.
mm,
And from what I've been told, soji, it's hard to get drunk off of it. It doesn't really taste much like anything. So you can easily just keep drinking it, drinking it, drinking it, drinking it. And this person died of alcohol poisoning,
mm,
poisoned themselves. So
mm,
um, a lot of these substances, they are big toxins to your body, to your organs, to your nervous system, to your brain, or they're, just a little douse of poison. But through and through, they are poisons, poisons. So it's almost like poisoning yourself slowly.
yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Slowly, there's a person that I had. Unfortunately, this is really sad. This guy was living in his parents' house in Houston, and
mm,
his parents had died. They were deceased, and this gentleman
mm,
refused to take care of himself or the property. So
mm,
I was at those days I was doing visits at home. I was, pre-COVID, and so I went into this overrun home. This had vines everywhere. It's totally unkept,
mm,
and I didn't even sit down in the house because it was totally unsterile. I wasn't, and the guy had this bottle, this 40-ounce bottle of alcohol,
mm,
a still reserve. I'd never even heard of this stuff before. And he began to tell me how much he drank, and it was disturbing. And I looked at the guy and I said, "Man, you need to go to the hospital today." you know, he was so addicted
mm,
until his body had become dependent
mm,
on that alcohol. If he didn't have 40 ounces of some kind of alcohol every day, of that type of malt liquor, I guess it was,
mm.
he would go into shock.
Yes, yes. Getting off of those poisons make your body
Hmm. Hmm.
um shake because it's
Hmm.
like finally you're not poisoning yourself, but you still got the poisons in your organs and we need to get it out, you know. Just a little bit about myself. I remember when I started drinking alcohol, it's like 19, 18, 19. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Everyone's doing it. Okay. And I would always get chest pain, you know?
Mm.
But, under social pressures, I'm like, okay, well, it goes away. And I started realizing not only getting chest pains, but I'm sweating.
Mm.
And after a while, I was like, no, there's no one, as I matured and saw the value in my heart and in my health and what this poison was actually doing. What are you doing to yourself?
Mm.
I said, no, I can no longer even have a sip because it's literally making me feel like I'm having cardiac arrest.
Mm.
That can't be good for anything, you know?
Mm.
So, it goes back to like that self-awareness part in your mind of being aware. What are you doing? Because there's lots of things that you can do, right? You can, not to say, they talk about in the Bible, Jesus drink wine and stuff like that. They tell mothers they can drink red wine during pregnancy and stuff like that, that it's good for them, it's good for your heart, but in moderation. And exactly how are you feeling when you're doing these things? One effect of using methamphetamines for people who have used it chronically. You can start seeing that they're itching frequently. They're picking at their skin. It's almost like they have an alteration to their mindset, almost like a form of dementia or psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it, but it's almost like they don't see it. All they're concentrated on is, like you said, that internal dialogue, that internal experience that they're having with their self, that they will allow themselves to lose anything and everything, along with people who are unfortunately addicted to alcohol as well.
Mm-hmm. I've seen people up for days on that. And matter of fact, there are a couple of guys, gentlemen I had in one of my ILP groups. They were sent to me by the Virginia VDOT, Virginia Department of Transportation, because of that reason.
Mhm.
Truck drivers, they were encouraged to make those deliveries, right?
Mhm.
And apparently their companies didn't have one of those boxes. I don't know what the technical term is, but they weren't being tracked by their corporations or whatever. And so they were encouraged to drive, and
Mhm.
overnight. And so they would use methamphetamines to stay up.
Mm.
And it's really speed. It's speed, and they worked on that and worked on that. And when they wanted to get off of it, they couldn't.
Mm.
See, and so it caused, and then it caused delusional behavior, distorted thinking, all kinds of things.
Mhm.
And so they were in a situation where they had to get treatment, and it was super sad to see. There was one kid. This is the worst case I ever saw. He was a college student in his
Mhm.
20s, and I'm like, what are you doing here? What are you on? Because I used to go around the room in our open group and ask the new people what's their drug of choice, because everybody's got one that's in there in the group.
Mhm.
This guy was like, well, it was it's methamphetamines. And I said, is this your, how many times you've been, have you used? He lied, and he said is his first time. And I didn't believe it, of course. You don't just start on meth. That's hardcore. I said,
Mhm.
what have you been doing before that? He wouldn't tell. He just can obfuscate it and everything. But that's, these behaviors are associated with drug use.
Mhm.
I'm not going to tell the truth. I'm going to minimize
Mhm.
my use, even if it comes down to smoking cigarettes. How
Mhm.
many times? The place I used to work in Houston, we used to do a survey, and it was part of our intake process. And how many? I can't remember the name of it now, but how many cigarettes did you smoke? Would you rather smoke in the morning or smoke in the evening? If you had to give up a cigarette, which one would it be? The first one in the morning or whatever? It's a series
Mhm.
about 5, 6 questions, and people would always tell the false stuff. I'm like, I know better than that. You guys are. But every now and again, you run across somebody to tell the truth. You say, I gotta have that first cigarette. I
Mhm.
gotta have. I said, well, as a question is like, well, when do you want it? First 30 minutes out of the bed, Sarah. They gotta have it.
Yes.
And so it's that type of thing, you know. And people have a hard time giving it up, even
Mhm.
in the psychiatric ward. I'm sure you've seen it. They
Yes.
have smoke breaks.
Oh man, they want to leave if they cannot. I worked in one where that's one thing we were like, no, you can't even smoke cigarettes. You got to use the nicotine patch or gum.
They
And
hate that.
some of them would be
Oh,
like, and even the people who were unhoused, they'd be like, okay, well, I'm leaving. I don't want to stay here. I don't care. I don't want to be here.
yeah, I
No,
don't care.
I'll leave. Like
No,
you would leave and be unsheltered so you can just smoke a cigarette.
yeah,
That's
serious is a hard time. And I've seen people. I worked under this psychiatrist. He's dead now. He would prescribe the patients on our team nicotine patches. Those people hated those patches. They're
right.
like, these patches terrible. You know, they don't do anything. But I realized what the problem was. See, the doctor didn't get it. He says it's the same thing as nicotine, so I'm just supplementing the cigarette for the patch. You're still getting the nicotine. And I studied the behaviors with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the way I had to look at it in a psychoanalytic way, right, Sarah? So I said, you know what? This is just a process addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about that that hit us of nicotine. It's the it's the picking up of the cigarette. See, it's the twirling it. It's you know the all the associations with the cigarette.
Good
It's
point.
developed.
Fidgetiness, oral fixation.
There you go. The and all of that. So that goes
Mm,
straight to Freud. The oral, fixation is some people would just put the cigarette at the edge of their mouth and they don't even light it. That's enough to satisfy that, say, that
mhm,
craving. Um, uh, all the way to, I gotta, and matter of fact, I used to watch, this is interesting. I used to watch
tell me.
patients. They would have developed these rituals with the
Mm,
cigarettes. Now, I think this is a big part of it. It goes
mhm,
down to or back to why it's process addiction. So they would, as soon as they hit the door, they'd fidget for their cigarette pack, right? And they
mhm,
get the cigarette out, they take one out, and they would take the cigarette and they would thump it, on the concrete or whatever, by the filter, and they would twirl the end, every time.
mm,
It's a whole thing that they would do.
mm,
And not everybody did the same thing. The rituals were different for every patient that
mm.
smoked.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
You've seen it, right?
That compulsion behavior they do to kind of get into using it, or even after they've used it to save it, how they
That's it.
save it.
Even if it's just a little bud, I'm saying.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, what are you gonna do with that? Throw it away. No, people. I've seen people fight over, that.
Hmm.
It's. I did a lot of work in the prisons and stuff in jails, and saw it there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Same thing.
And it affects, I would say, every part of the lifespan. Even in my own community years ago, God rest this young man's soul, but this young man, and I live in a fairly safe neighborhood and community. He went up to the park to meet another friend, and they were exchanging marijuana.
Mm,
And I don't know what happened. I guess they got into an argument, and the other kid shot the other kid and left
mm,
him there to die.
mm,
You know,
mm,
God rest his soul. And it's just so senseless, because we're talking about a plant here, grass. But behind that is those children's, both of theirs, their home life, their mental health, both of them, and then their addiction to doing neurotic activities, behaviors, illegal behaviors, like such, like that. So,
mm, mm,
behind those things, especially someone with alcohol, I find that they're deeply sad and very anxious all at the same time.
mm, and they're looking for something that will satisfy that in
Hmm.
body. It's always that nervousness, that edginess, and you could see the tension almost release in their bodies
Hmm.
when they sit down and again, the people who drink and everything, they have rituals too. And
Hmm.
and they would people. Matter of fact, one of my first drug courses I ever took back in the '90s talked about it. This guy, our instructor, he was talking about it. That's when crack cocaine was the thing, and
Hmm.
he said that was addicted to crack cocaine, and he couldn't leave it alone. And he says that the compulsion was so powerful because his favorite place to use that drug was in the hall, the restroom that was in the hallway. You know how they have these restrooms in some of these houses, a lot of the older houses anyway.
Mm,
Um, don't have a restroom for guests or whatever, like downstairs or something. A
mm-hmm,
halfback. He would go in there, and that's where he would do his drug. And
mm,
so the compulsion was so powerful to where he said he literally had to take the door off of the hinge, off the restroom, and
mm.
store it in the garage.
Wow.
Because every time he passed by that restroom, he would get a strong compulsion to use, and he would use.
Mm,
And so, and I know this to be true because when I was in Virginia, I had a case where this guy did the same thing. He was Russian though,
mm,
and he lived on the mountain, and there was only one way into town and one way out, pretty much.
mm,
And when he would come into town, he had to pass. The liquor stores in Virginia are strange because they call them ABC stores, like A, B, C, D. They're like that.
oh,
And the government sold the liquor up there. This is
oh,
strange, but
wow.
that's what they did. Yeah, the government was in the business of selling alcohol, and so they would operate these liquor stores, right?
Mm,
The state government, the Commonwealth, Virginia. And so he would have to drive by this ABC store going to work, and then he would have to drive by that same store going home back up the mountain. And it
mm,
became such a problem that he says, "You don't understand, Chris. I had to stop. I had to stop by every time I drive by that store. I have to stop. I have to go in. I have to buy I forgot what his favorite drink. We'll call it gin or something."
mm.
And and by the time that guy would get home, he would have drank that bottle almost halfway or almost all the way. It was
Wow.
terrible. And of course, he'd have to hear from his mother and his wife and all this kind of stuff. And his wife, what got him to come to me was not just the police, because he got caught for driving while intoxicated, but his wife was like, "I'm going to divorce you." And I think they were Muslim or something. So that was a big thing for. And so he's like, "I got to get off this stuff. I'm losing everything." I'm like, "Yeah, you are." I said, "You
Yeah.
need to find." We had to route, I kid you not, a whole different way home for this guy.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
how powerful that compulsion was. And we did that in group one day. I said, "We need to route a whole you need to just avoid this whole stretch of road." And that's what he ended up doing. It took an extra 30 minutes to get home, but that took care of the problem initially anyway.
Wow.
So some people, it's people, places, and things.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. And the things, you had a good point. It was a gas station, a liquor store on the corner that you had to pass by every day. So it was kind of like an option, in his illusion every single day to have that as his choice. And I've noticed as areas get more populated, they have more and more liquor stores, gas stations that have liquor stores in them. Just
right.
in my community, there's one, two, three, four, five. There's at least six gas stations. They all have liquor stores
That's wild.
on the
Wow.
highway, and it's not good. It's not good. You
Yeah.
just made me think of how many people could be struggling with alcohol addiction and things of that sort, especially um, in the town I live in, since there's a lot of military. San Antonio is one of the biggest military towns in the United States. So it's it's the communities as things get busier, places are growing, they're building these businesses, these institutions, because they're making money, but they're also contributing to the brokenness in the community, people's addictions, their vices, and just breaking down families. It's pretty unfortunate. You would think there's something else they could put on those
Well,
reports.
there are a lot of things they could put, but they don't. They put in liquor stores, and this could be a probably conspiracy theory, but they're talking about how I heard somebody mention it that, and it says, Chris, just think about where they put the liquor stores, what types of neighborhoods, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I never thought about it, but they're usually middle income, low income neighborhoods,
Mhm.
and I'm like, you know what? Once I thought about it, I said, you got a point there. But
Mhm.
that was then. Now you can't go to a neighborhood hardly, even if you're really high class neighborhood. There's going to be even if it's at the entrance of the neighborhood. There's going to be one within a mile or so of that.
Mhm. It's gonna be a fancy one with the
Oh yeah,
fancy name, but
oh yeah. It's going to be one. You're going to be able. Well, now you don't have to go, Sarah. You could order it online. They'll bring it
yes,
to your door now.
yes,
Ah, they'll bring it
yes.
right to your door.
Hmm.
Ain't that something?
Speaking,
And then the family systems,
it's at my door. Hmm.
the family systems get wrecked because everyone in the families is so affected by this behavior.
Yes, yes.
The child, the dog, the
Hmm.
cat, we don't think about that. Uh, you know, the mom, the dad, whoever's involved, whoever lives in that household or close relation to that household
Hmm.
is affected. Give an example, personal example. My dad's best friend, and I didn't know it, but he was an alcoholic. Now we didn't know as kids that was because they protected us, they shielded us from that, right?
Hmm.
But every Monday night we'd end up over at their house
Hmm.
and sitting down watching TV past our bedtime. I never understood why,
Hmm.
but it wasn't until I was an adult that the truth really came out.
Hmm.
See, my dad was his best friend's monitor.
Hmm.
Whenever his best friend, my dad's best friend, would go out and get drunk on this particular nights,
Hmm.
my dad's best friend's wife would call and have my dad go look for him,
Oh, wow.
and then we would end up over their house. See,
Hmm.
and they would always be late at night, and we'd be there just sitting watching TV in their living room, wondering why we can't go to bed. Well,
Hmm.
the whole thing was it was that was happening because my dad's best friend was out with buddies at the bar,
Hmm.
and whenever he would get in trouble, wouldn't come home, my dad would get a call and he'd go and look for him. We'd have to go and sit at their house until he found him. So
Hmm.
you had two whole families affected
Hmm.
by that whole scenario, and that went on for years,
Hmm.
years and years.
And looking back on that, what do you think that your dad could have done to be that game changer for that situation?
Um, a it would have been very difficult, but not been the guy to go look for him. That's enabling behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And two, hey, let's go get some help. you know, let's go to rehab. Let's go to, that was back in the 70s, but
Mhm.
there's still rehab. There are things that could have been done. Instead of going through this ritual, here we go with the rituals again,
Mhm.
every time. And I remember, same person relapsed. And by this time, I was an adult. I was grown.
Mhm.
And that whole thing happened again.
Mhm.
And my dad wasn't available to go look because he and my mom had had a divorce. And so my dad's friend called my mom, and my mom had my brother and I and somebody else related to the family. Now we're in our 20s. We took our dad's place.
Wow. So
Yes.
this is like a cycle. They got y'all
Yeah,
in the cycle to help enable this behavior.
that's right.
Support it.
And the sad thing is, I'm like, I no one said what was happening. It's like a stage play.
Mhm.
And everybody just took their positions. It
Yes.
was so strange.
Yes.
Everybody took their positions.
Yes.
And it was 25 years since the last episode.
Mhm.
And everybody took their positions. My mom took her position as a consoler. My dad wasn't. He was the only part that wasn't there. So then my baby brother took his spot.
Mhm.
This kind of stuff. And it's like, this is bizarre.
Mhm.
Children who are now adults going through all of the stuff,
Mhm.
where's my daddy and all of that.
Mhm.
It's just the whole thing. And I'm thinking, wow. But these systems, and I found out later that this particular individual, his family had this problem.
The whole family.
The
Yeah.
whole family.
Mhm.
The whole family. And I'm not too sure mine didn't either because how did we get involved? You see what I'm saying? It's
Right.
like, eh, maybe our presentation didn't look like that one,
Right.
but we had a bar in our house, a full bar. just
Yeah.
like in the old Western days. We had a full bar. What are we doing with the bar? So
Yeah.
there are things there that, you know, that sometimes kids overlook
Mhm.
because we and this is the other piece, we normalize things
Mhm. Mhm.
as though these things are supposed to happen or as though everyone goes through them. They don't.
Mhm.
It's normalized in these family
Well,
systems.
I've heard someone say, "Oh, I had a client tell me this week, well, I guess my life is boring because I don't go out and party and drink all the time." And I was like, "No,
Yeah, no. Nah. But you could blame society for that part because now I don't know about it anymore, but back in the 80s and the 70s, as I
Mhm.
remember, you had all of the slit malt liquor beer commercials and the bull commercials and all of the commercials about alcohol. And
Mhm.
everybody always had a good time in those commercials, right?
I'm
Um, yeah.
Cheers,
I
the show Cheers,
here, yes, one of my favorite.
years."
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes. Favorite. It was always, they never showed the downtown, the wrecks or, people dying or, no, none of that. It was always the good times.
Mhm.
Family events. I'm thinking back a lot. There was going to be two things going at least our family events anyway. And I'm not talking about at my grandparents' house because we couldn't do that stuff there, but
Mhm.
like at the park, if you went to a social event at the park, there's going to be two things. There's going to be some blues playing in the background,
Mhm.
and there's gonna be some alcohol.
Yeah,
Oh, and barbecue.
and
Those
barbecue.
three things gonna be going on. And oh, dominoes. Four things.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
But
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, right? That was a good time.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely. And it's like,
Family
where do we
times.
learn that? And what are some signs that you would tell someone to be able to identify, okay, these things are not working for you anymore? Your family, not only you need help, but your family needs help because, you know, I'm going to be honest, substance abuse has been something through generations that has affected my own family. And like you said, it's normalized as a good time. If you don't do it, you're kind of like seen as you're
You're the square.
weird, you're a square, oh, you're bougie, oh, you think you're better.
Yeah. To where you literally just hold the drink. You just hold it. You
Yeah.
don't even take. Oh, one of the signs is so what are the effects of it, right?
Hmm.
What is it? What is this drug doing?
Hmm.
Not just to the individual that's drinking, but the system. What's it
Hmm.
doing? So if it's literally manipulate, if the system has to manipulate itself to accommodate the behavior,
Hmm.
you have a problem.
Hmm.
You have a problem
Hmm.
because just like it was in the scenario I talked about before about this relapse happening, everybody's like on stage, take your places type of thing. Yeah,
Hmm.
the system's already geared. It's been trained.
Hmm.
This is what you got to do. Nobody has to tell you. Nobody has to tell you, Sarah, this is what you got to do. No, you already know your part. Your
Hmm.
part has already been handed to you.
Hmm.
You've observed it, and this is what you do. It's expected. So
Don't
that's
mess
that's
up.
that's right. And so no one has to say, Chris, I need you to go do this now. No, no, I already know what to do. I've seen this 1,000 times. So that's how you know the system's okay involved,
Hmm.
right? So the person's involved, the system's involved. Um, we know that if you have manipulation going on,
Hmm.
there's a problem there.
Hmm.
That's the third thing. So you've got manipulation there. The person will manipulate things, like let's have a fish fry. No notice, nothing. Let's just all of a sudden, right?
Hmm.
Let's have a fish fry. But you already know it's not just going to be a fish fry. You're going to have cards, dominoes. They're going to be playing, Bobby Blue Bland or somebody, right?
Hmm.
The blues. They're going to be playing, some old school stuff, and they're going to be some drinking.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh
That
yeah.
it, right? It comes with it.
Hmm.
We're
Hmm.
gonna have a good time, and it's always got to have the alcohol, right? You're gonna be, and so this is we have linked, and this is other piece. This is the cognitive part.
Hmm.
We have linked an activity with of drinking and partying with it's going to be a good time,
Hmm.
right? We've anchored this concept in our brain.
Hmm.
So cognitively, we already know in order to have a good time, we need to drink.
Hmm. We need to
So
be
that,
altered.
oh yes, we're gonna be altered.
Hmm.
Now, in my family, we didn't smoke weed or nothing, but there were cigarettes
Hmm.
and there was alcohol.
Hmm.
And honestly, I never really saw anybody drunk. But thinking back on it, how would I know?
Right. But that's
Because
the only way you saw them.
It was normalized.
Mm-hmm.
Even my neighbors, there was a guy down the street, mowed his yard, had a beer in his hand. you know, go to my, cousin's garage.
Mm-hmm.
They were always drinking beer. Like if they wasn't working on a car, it's time. It's break times. It was beer time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it was so normalized,
Mm-hmm.
and I never saw any of these people that I could imagine like drunk, like. But then, of course, we know that you know you could be inebriated without looking drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all of that, and so I think it's kind of like going to a funeral without having food. You gotta have a problem.
Good point. People are going to start having that alteration in their mindset, their feelings, sometimes their language,
Oh
body parts, mechanics. I've never seen anybody, get violently sick, but from drinking, but I've heard stories. This one lady told me, she was my neighbor, and I was around them at a party where there was drinking, and I left because they were getting really altered. And she was
yeah.
like, she came back and she apologized. Oh, that was nothing. Cause one day me and my husband had a party and we got really altered, and then the next day he had diarrhea all over the house.
Of course it did.
And I
Oh yeah.
was, and my question was, who cleaned it up? She's
Right.
like, I did. And I'm like, oh no, I would have went to the hotel. No, mm-mm, no.
But it was okay though, right?
She knew her
Right.
role. She
She
knew
she knew
what she
her
had to
role.
do.
That's it. She knew, and she fell right in line.
So all those alterations to what is actually normal mechanics of the psychology of the what family is there for. Is it there for to kind of siphon each other or scapegoat or manipulate each other upon each other? I mean, that's worse than a pack of wolves. At least the wolves, stay together.
At least it will stay. I'll say, Sarah, it's all of the above because in order to a
What's that?
engage in that behavior, you have to have your ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got to know their parts, know their lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the director of the play, hey, lights on, camera, action.
Mm-hmm.
Without that, you don't really have the mechanism. Now, there are rare instances. There's a guy that was in my IOP group, and he was a loner,
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he did, now this is interesting. What he did was he I had them do an exercise
Mm-hmm.
talking about their best friend. They had to all come up with a best friend, like somebody who they were closely related to, and talk about that best friend.
Mm-hmm.
This guy was from, let's say it was Ohio, right? And we're in Virginia. And this guy says, now everyone else in the IOP group really had a real best friend. This particular guy, no.
Mm-hmm.
He started his, and I had them, oh, what did I have them do? I had them do timelines. That's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to start from the first use, whether it was 5 years old, 14 years old, 25 years old, didn't matter. When was that first time that alcohol touched your lips? That's when I wanted that timeline to start.
Mm-hmm.
So this one guy said that his best friend was his alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
He left the whole state where he used to live, say Ohio, right? Went all the way to Virginia and continued with his behaviors in Virginia. And I'm like, well, what was the point of you leaving your old stuff? You can do the same thing over here.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about how he would drive home and he would drive home with the alcohol in his car. And before he would get home, he was drinking. And he
Mm-hmm.
says, but you don't understand, Chris. This is like my best friend. And I've never heard that before. And I'm like, he has equated this substance with a person.
Mm-hmm.
He says, Chris, you don't understand. When I talk to it, it don't talk back.
Mm-hmm.
He says, when I tell it all my problems, I don't have to worry about it lying on me or rejecting me. It accepts me as I am. He's personified this thing. And I said, look at this. And of course I had to violate him and send him to jail, but you get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
He
He
has persona.
he was getting
Yeah.
delusional too.
Oh yes.
Mm.
How can you this alcohol is riding in your vehicle, quote unquote, like it was a human being? No, man, that's this wine or whatever it was. I forgot what his drug of choice was. I said, but this is alcohol. This is why you're in IOP in the first place. It's my best friend. I can't give it up. I'm like, what? Yes. Oh yeah.
It's so sad, and like you said, it affects the whole family. For the family to be able to adapt, they gain a role. Even the children, they start a role in role playing. They
Yeah.
learn what to accept, what not to do, what to say. And for those out there that are resonating with what we're talking about, it's not to say that alcohol is the only dependency. Food can be an issue
Yes.
with indulging or restricting. I mean, I've seen more people in my community that are anorexic walking around, and they might have somebody with them that is kind of enabling, and then vice versa. Um, I know we talked about before drama,
Yeah.
social media, um,
Mhm.
just really toxic behaviors and how it shapes the family, makes these personalities disconnected from their self to where they can't even be themselves. They can't be their true self.
Well, I remember treating somebody, oh my gosh, years ago. I was still in school,
Mhm.
who had anorexia nervosa.
Mhm.
And this person was an undergrad student at a local university. And they had, after, you know, interviewing them, they had childhood sexual trauma.
Mm.
And this young lady, the only way she could deal with that was to control her intake
Mm.
because she didn't have control when she was a little girl, say.
Mm.
So she had to develop agency somewhere. See, cognitively, this is how she's thinking.
Mm.
And so, in order to develop agency, I can't control what somebody's done to my body when I was not able to control. So now, as an adult, I'm going to have agency over my body um, by restricting what I intake, say.
Mm.
So she was malnourished. I think she may have weighed 90 pounds or something like that.
Mm.
And then of course you can go the other way, right? And so, but all of that, all those controlling behaviors, I call them,
Mhm.
are maladaptive ways. So
Mhm.
yet another sign that I'm using substances of some kind. So, like you said beautifully, I'm either going to restrict or I'm going to overindulge.
Mhm.
But you're on that continuum, you see.
Mhm.
You're on the continuum, right? And where you want to be is in the middle, but no, of course not. You're going to be on one side or the other.
Mhm.
And so that's what people do. They do it with any kind of addictive behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And this compulsivity that's there, this justification that's there. People will even set up like the fish fry. People will set it up in their heads and justify it, make it look, and then normalize it. And everybody plays their part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yes.
Everybody plays their role
And
because
let me not forget the sexual addictions out there for people who are using sex to hide behind their own lack of esteem, you know.
there's one case I had, I kid you not. This person, real problem, sexual addiction.
Mm-hmm.
They normalized it. They justified it.
Mm-hmm.
They even left home. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to deal with it. Got
Mm-hmm.
angry if you talked about it, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted everybody to overlook it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of thing. And I've seen it in men and women. And by the way, it looks different.
Mm-hmm. Oh
It looks
yes.
very different in women than it does in men.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely different.
Mm-hmm.
Because men, it's normalized by society,
Yes.
right?
Yes. At
I'm
a
going
very
to the
young age.
club. I'm sorry.
At a very young age, I went to a comedy show last year with the comedian D Ray, and he was talking about that. You know, he was telling these good jokes, and at the end, he was like, "Don't you see how in our community we normalize being hypersexual with our boys? Just think about it. If we told a little girl when she was 2 years old, we hit her on her butt and said, "Oh, that pamper looks good on you. You got a fat ass," you know. But we're
Yeah, right.
telling boys, "Oh, you so handsome. You flirting with me. You gonna have all the girls. You gonna sex them down and stuff." We're putting poison in their minds, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
And people don't think about it.
Yeah.
People just go with it.
Hmm.
It's so sad when you start looking at all of these things, and it's like, hey, none of this is right. This is horrible. What are you doing to the? You're programming this particular.
No, not yet. Later.
You know, you're programming this child. I remember this lady that came to me. She had a sexual addiction, still does,
Hmm.
and she was crying her eyes out. I mean,
Hmm.
she was crying her uncontrollably. Was telling me about what she was dealing with and how it started. You know when it started, Sarah? She was a teenager.
Hmm.
And she fell into somebody, and this is how social media will wrap you up.
Hmm. Tell them.
She was a teenager. It was about, say, 15 years ago, right? Teenager on the internet, on the phone, ended up meeting somebody she had no business meeting. Her parents didn't know where she was. And all of a sudden, she got seduced. And it wasn't a man that did it, it was a man and a wife, a husband. It was a team.
Wow.
Yep.
People don't talk about that a lot.
Nope. It was a team. It was a husband and wife. And the wife was the one that pulled her into the relationship.
Mm,
He was 16.
mm,
And it went from that to them literally taking her and trafficking her. And so she turned into their prostitute for 5, 6 years.
wow.
And it went from that to then she went to porn,
Wow.
and she went to, when she reached out to me, she was just trafficking herself for free.
Wow.
Free.
Wow.
And I remember that first session we had, she says, Chris, if it wasn't for you tonight, my plan was I was gonna go out, kind of like those chips I was talking about before. I was gonna go out and I was gonna have sex with two different men. at the same time. I'm like,
Mm.
had no idea. You can't, y'all, you can't tell by looking at people.
No,
You can't tell. You
you
don't
don't
know
know
what.
what you don't know.
No, and the woman was hurting. She was just bawling uncontrollably. And she was in a perfectly healthy relationship.
Hmm.
Somebody she loved and cared about. And she's like, you saved me from going out and doing this thing. She
Hmm.
didn't really, and she the way she talked about it was that she didn't want to do it,
Hmm.
but she felt compelled to do it.
That compulsion to please others through sex so that she didn't have to feel her emotions. She didn't have to face herself and the fact that she had been taken advantage, treated unworthy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's so sad. And this is such a deep um conversation. So,
yeah.
I mean, we could talk forever about this, but I definitely appreciate your time. I gotta go to Spanish class now. So,
uh,
everyone out there, if you resonate with anything we spoke about, definitely reach out, schedule an appointment online. You can do it discreet, confidentially. Schedule an appointment online. You can give us a call. The number and the website will be under this post. But if you want to just write it down, it's www dot. When I glance one. Okay, a little bit after Spanish class. Okay, www dot contigobh.com. That's contigobh.com. Or you can give us a call at 214. Hold on, baby. 764-6810. And we look forward to uplifting you and helping out your family to further your health, your wealth, and your legacy. And definitely let us know if you have any questions. Me and Chris are here for you. So we'll be back next Wednesday to talk some more about this topic because it is so deep. But everyone have a great night. Thank you so much, Chris.
Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you. Mama. You too. Hold on, baby boo. Let's see. I don't want to end it wrong. I'll talk to you, please. Wee. I'll talk to you. Okay, just wait now. Wait your bridges. I'll talk to you someone. Please, I want to. I want when I play home. I'm gonna get you your ice cream. I love you. I love you more. Say la vie. Thank you. There you go. You can take that. Sure. Let me do this. Hopefully.